So, after another success with Scream 2 in the box office, making 172 million worldwide, we would get Scream 3. But it would take unusually long to release it for a sequel. Scream 2 was released in '97, and we would have to wait till the year 2000 to get Scream 3. The reason being for that it was a lot of things happening in real life and behind the scenes. That would affect how the finished movie turned out. Scream 3 was planned already in '97, well, at least at the beginning of '98. But one big event in '99 would shape how the movie's tone would be affected. I'm of course talking about the Columbine mass shooting. There was a certain pressure in Hollywood to not make too violent movies after that event happened, and that would ultimately affect the execution of the movies. And Scream 3 was one of the movies that got affected by that. The finished movie that got released is one of the most hated entries in the franchise by fans, at least by most fans, even though it has got some love more recently, more respect for the past 5 years maybe. And even though I don't think it's an awful movie like in many other franchises where as long as they go on, the movies get weaker and even almost unwatchable, like many movies in the Halloween franchise and the Friday the 13th franchise. I do think it's the weakest entry in the franchise. It's overall a good movie, it's overall a good ending for Sydney, but there are many choices that just don't work in this final entry. Well, the final entry at the time, because we did get 4, 5, and 6 decades later. But at the time, Scream 3 was planned to cap off the trilogy. And it starts well, it has a good opening scene, with Cotton Wary getting killed. It is a good opening scene because it is a character that is semi-developed. He had a through line throughout the trilogy. He wasn't really a likable character, but that was the point. He was a money-hungry, fame-hungry character. But he kind of had his reasons to be like that. After all, he was wrongly accused and was sent to jail because Sydney wrongly pointed him out as the killer of her mom. And the special thing about this opening scene also is that the killer uses a voice changer that doesn't just sound like Roger L. Jackson, the very iconic voice of Ghostface. But now Ghostface can mimic any voice of any person. And that is cool on paper, but it was not a technology that was really invented by then, by the 2000s. And the reason I'm saying that is because the Scream franchise is very grounded. So when you use something that really doesn't exist or doesn't have an explanation on how it exists within the world you created, then it is a problem. It would work much better now, when that technology is quite possible, and even more, with AI and everything. And on a side note, I really do think that AI will play a big role in Scream 7. But now in 2026, it's much more credible. So Ghostface pretends to be a fan of Cotton because he has his show that is called 100% Cotton. Ghostface basically toys with him first, pretending to be a female fan and kind of hitting on him. And he definitely takes the bait at first, until Ghostface reveals himself and we hear that iconic voice again, and tells him he is at his house where his girlfriend is taking a shower. And he basically speeds through the city trying to save her. He arrives, And because Ghostface can mimic any voice, he mimics Cotton too with his girlfriend before that. So when he arrives and tries to calm her, she thinks he's crazy and trying to kill her. He tries to convince her it's not him, and Ghostface turns up behind her and stabs her in the back. Then chases Cotton and kills him too. And that is a great setup for the third movie, with stakes being set at the beginning. But after that great opening scene, we really get a totally different movie. A movie that doesn't know what it wants to be. A movie that is very restricted. A movie that almost feels like an episode of Scooby-Doo. And not in a good way, it is too light in tone that it almost feels like a comedy. There's too much satire here that it kind of overtakes the story in the movie. The Scream franchise has always had satire, but it didn't really overtake the serious parts in the previous two movies. Here it just takes over. Every character feels like a caricature. One example is Dewey. He has always been a more goofy character, but he's too goofy. Here he's always kind of acting goofy in every situation, even in conversations. And I'm not saying that it's the actor's fault. He acted accordingly to how the script is written and what they were trying to do with this movie. Because the biggest issue with Scream 3 is the tone. One of the aspects when it comes to tone are the kills. The kills in this movie are probably the weakest kills in the whole franchise. They basically cut away from every kill, except for a few by the end, and even those are weak. You barely see any gore or blood. It's mostly all just implied. Not that the Scream franchise has ever been very gory, but the kills had some brutality and violence to them. Here they go by very fast. The second issue when it comes to tone is this idea with having the actual characters interact with the Stab 3 actors. And I do understand what they were going for, but it doesn't work here. Too many characters that have no function within the story. They interact with the main trio, but they have no connection to them besides playing them. And they have no mini arcs for themselves. They just turn up in a couple of scenes here and there, except for one of the new characters. And I'm talking about Jennifer Jolie, portrayed by Parker Posey, who does a really great job here with this character, and she's wonderful in this role. She actually has something to do in this movie like the other new characters lack. She's at least the most memorable one. The others are just there to get killed and nothing else. And the reason I say that is, yes, you will have characters that get killed in a slasher, but what Scream has done well before is that even though the characters that are getting killed, they are quite developed. They have a function within the story, despite being smaller characters or supporting characters. In this one, you get introduced to the new characters, but only one really has something memorable to them. The others basically have 2 or 3 scenes tops, and they leave no impact in the movie, besides from a few funny lines here and there. And the last issue I have is not really with Roman's motive. The motive works overall, and it does tie up the trilogy, but it just feels too much of a retcon. And you notice that this wasn't the plan from the beginning. Billy in the first movie didn't really seem like a character you can just bully around. But that's neither here or there. It's more about how the reveal is handled. Roman basically has no interaction with Sydney until the reveal. And when he reveals himself, it's a monologue dump. And that's fine, all the killers do a monologue dump by the end. But here there's nothing that leads up to it. Roman as a character, he isn't really in the movie a lot. Basically just a couple of scenes in the beginning and middle of the movie, and then a lot by the end. Also, there are some logical things that just don't work, like him being in costume as Ghostface seconds after he is shown being dead in a basement. Also, him chasing a character and being at one end of the house and then surprising that character at another end of the house seconds later. So there are some signs that this wasn't really what they were planning at the start. This story wasn't in the plans at the start. And that it was supposed to be 2 ghost faces, not 1. Also, the execution of the reveal just feels so cliché. So those are my negatives about Scream 3. And here come my positives. The strongest part about Scream 3 is that they tie up Sydney's arc in a very good way. She gets a conclusion in this movie. Even though she isn't as much in this movie as in 1 and 2. She gets her happy ending. Roman, till now, is the last connection to her past. And she can finally relax. The other part I do think this movie does well is that it ties up the trilogy. Not in a perfect way, but in a functional way. It overall works with Roman as the last Ghostface and him being the mastermind, even though it is a bit too tacked on. The performances in this movie are all great too. The acting is good, especially from the trio. They do what's asked of them, and they're all good here. The third thing I like is the core idea with these Stab 3 actors. Even though it's one of the weakest parts, it could have worked. It could have been a cool idea. There was potential to make this a very self-aware movie, but as it is, it's not. The idea is just underdeveloped. The movie ultimately asks too much of you for it to make internal logical sense. But it's not a bad movie, you are never bored by it. It's almost like a comedy, and it's almost using its weaknesses as a form of entertainment value. So I'm giving Scream 3 a 6 out of 10. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Also, don't forget to smash the bell icon so that you don't miss any of my future videos. Next up will be Scream 4. This has been Phantom Frame. Thank you so much for watching.